Okay. I noticed that Anne, you came in. You want to unmute? Come on, unmute.
There, I got it. Yes.
Since you originally recruited Diana, would you like to introduce her?
Well, I would just say I think she's one of the wonder women of the world, and it was such a wonderful treat to get to know her and to know that there were possibilities out there that might work for me. And when we were talking in the committee about who might people be interested in, it just seemed a natural. And I had also Marnie on my list, and was telling her that, and she said, well, they know each other really well, and she thought she'd be a good follow-up to Marnie. So, you know, life works out well. I think I might be becoming not a person you could see because I really need to do my stretching and icing work. I put it off. I've been really good at the computer doing emails I procrastinated on. So if I leave, it won't be that I'm not watching every minute or that I don't care, but I really have to keep working on my crummy new knee. So Diana, welcome. Tell them a little bit about your story, if you will. And
absolutely.
I just love a great story about a woman who created something. And
absolutely. Thank you, Anne. It was great to see you. It's been a very long time, but yes. My name is Diana Uricchio. I'm a certified photo organizer and life document organizer and the owner of OXO Digital Organizing in Orlando. So what I do is I specialize in organizing essentially the documents that you have to keep and the memories and all the photos that you really want to keep. And the reason we do this is it's really about the people that are in your life. It's about remembering, you know, the memories that you've made with them in the past and then how you want them to remember you into the future. And the way that I came about doing this, I've been in business for about 8 years now. I have a tech background, but when I had my kids, I have twins that are 16 now, left the corporate world and was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years. And then when I started looking into other options, what I wanted to do with the next chapter, I really found myself kind of going back to a number of experiences in my life. So one was when my father had passed away and I helped my mom with all the documents and the photos. And I was realizing how difficult, you know, it's a difficult process anyway, trying to go through all of that. But to have to do that in those moments that you're the most vulnerable is, you know, really, really difficult. And the reality is that's when a lot of us end up doing this, is when something happens and we have to. So that was one situation. And then years later, a very good friend of my mom, who was actually her neighbor, was starting to have some issues with dementia. And when that was happening, I was really telling her, I said, you know, we've got to help her get her documents and her photos in order. And I knew that her daughter was in New York and, you know, she lived alone. So it was something I thought, you know, somebody's got to help her with that. So I tried to find an organizer that would do that. And all of them were happy to organize the paperwork or put everything in, you know, nice, neat, color-coded files. But nobody really knew how to digitize them and then share them with the daughter who was in New York. So all of a sudden I realized there might be an opportunity. Somebody, you know, there needs to be somebody that understands both sides of, you know, organizing and the technology behind what's coming ahead. And that's really where OXO started. Initially, I thought I was going to primarily work with people's documents. And very, very quickly, I realized that even though everybody wanted some help with their vital documents, they all wanted to start with their pictures. So my business shifted to about, I would say about 95% is digitizing, organizing, backing up, and helping clients share that family collection of photos. So I don't know if you want, I'm going to jump into a few things, and I actually, because I'm in my office, I can kind of show you some of the things that I don't normally get to show people. So I can give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that you can do. So again, a lot of you actually, I'm sure, have a lot of different photos at home. I don't know if you can see, actually, I don't know if you can see this behind me, but I'm going to ask you guys a few things. How many of you guys have like little envelopes and sleeves like this with doubles inside of pictures? Yes, I see hands going up. And chances are it's 24 pictures in there. And then again, the doubles, so that's 48. And, you know, maybe that was from your first trip to Paris and you took pictures of Eiffel Tower. But since then, you've been back to Paris 10 times. And unlike 20 years ago when you had to take pictures of that Eiffel Tower and show everybody that that's where you were, now if you really want a great picture of the Eiffel Tower, you can actually just Google it. So what happens is these are the things that start collecting. So this is one thing you might find. Let me see here, I've got a couple things. Things like this, your kids. This is actually my husband, I think, playing baseball. Yep, that's what that is. So again, if you have multiple kids, you probably have bins full of activities and photos from their lifetime and what they did as a child. Anybody have things like, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, I see another hand going up. Exactly. So I actually have assistants that don't even know what this is because they've never seen the old film reels. But these are things that have to get converted. These are things that, you know, if you're lucky, that film is still intact and is still in good condition, so it can be converted to a digital file. So even if you have VHS tapes, you may not even have a VHS player to play that tape in. I would venture to say a lot of my clients have their wedding memories locked up in that VHS tape, and that's something that needs to get converted. So there's all types of things that people have that are part of their memory collections. And it's not just those individual photos or albums or scrapbooks. It can be slides. It can be, like I said, VHS. It can be all types of media. And then to take it a step further, it might not just be the pictures or the videos that you're taking. It could be things like recipes. It could be memorabilia and actual certificates on the wall. There's just so many things that make up your family history and your family collection of photos. And all of those things have to be taken into consideration when you are trying to preserve those memories. So what we do is we go in, and first off, when I go and see a client, we try to go on a little bit of a treasure hunt. So I want to see everything first. And the reason is, even if you really just want to organize, let's say, the last 20 years or something just for your daughter's wedding, it's really important to know what you have as a whole so you can make the best decisions on this project. So we go on a little bit of a treasure hunt and just find out what you have. Get it all in one place if possible. And that way we can determine what has to be done and prioritize from there. Once you've got it all in one place, then we kind of break things up and decide how you're going to tackle that. And that is to, first is to decide what you're keeping. And that's where you're going to go through all those envelopes and all of those scrapbooks and, take out what you don't need any longer, what's no longer serving you, and then decide how you're going to move forward. So once we've kind of organized that and culled that collection down, then we move on to digitizing. And sometimes people choose to do some of this themselves. Some people outsource, and we can take it from there. And that is, it's really going to serve two purposes. First off, your memories are going to be much more useful to you in a digital format because you can do something with them. You can turn them into books, into gifts. But also it's going to serve as a backup. So even if you've put all of these pictures into a beautiful archival box, it's still not completely safe unless you've got a backup of that. And the only way of doing that is to digitize them. I do have clients that, frankly, they have no interest in that digital copy, but it's the way that they're going to transfer these memories to their kids. A lot of folks will talk about how, oh, my kids have no interest in my photos. And I try to remind them that the reality is they just don't have interest in the dusty box. They don't want to go through the box. They don't want to have to deal with all that. But if you hand them a flash drive or a hard drive with a really beautifully organized collection, all of a sudden they can connect with that. And I can't tell you how many times I've had clients either text or email their granddaughter a picture of grandma back when she was 16 on the beach. And it's completely different when the younger generation gets it in the format that they're used to. So that's another big thing that we try to help, clients do. And then once everything's digitized, we're also trying to help the client back everything up, make sure that it's safe and secure. And then from there also have a system going forward so you know how to keep from having a whole new digital mess. And then lastly, making sure that you have a way of continuing to add on to the collection, and then also making sure that people in your life know what you've done and how they can access it if ever they need to. So there's all different types of directions that I could go in as far as talking about organizing and doing all sorts of things with your photos. Does anybody have any specific questions?
I have
I
one.
do.
What would
Okay.
grab and go kit?
Absolutely. And again, I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. So Diana was asking about the grab and go kit. So one of the things I do in the workshops, primarily, I will talk about how people can do it themselves. And then for some clients, I've actually, organized all of these. But if you think about your vital documents, the things like birth certificates, military documents, passports, all of those things that are very, very vital. That's something that you really need to have organized, and I would suggest digitized. But what's unique about those is you also have to keep the originals. So I can actually show you what mine looks like. And this is a really simple thing. It's just literally something with a handle that you can run out the door with. And this is not a fancy binder. It kind of looks like a trapper keeper or something, but it has in it really everything that you need. In just like, I just have it in sleeves here, and I have passports. I have a list of everything in our life. And then in addition to that, I've got an actual USB drive of everything digitized. So my photos are right here. All of the vital documents are right here. And God forbid something happens and we have to run out of the door, because of a hurricane or anything like that, everything is right here. And even my kids know, they know, like, grab the red binder if something goes wrong. And that's where they find it. But this is really, really important because I know a lot of very, very organized folks who have worked with their estate planner, they've worked with their attorneys, and they have everything organized, but it's not necessarily easily accessible. So this just allows it to be really easy to literally grab and go. And then also it gives you a place to send your loved ones if something happens to you. So I know there was another question there.
Yeah.
Myrna?
Myrna. The flash drive is really nice, but I'm wondering what the next generation of storage is going to be. We have gone from 8 tracks to regular cassettes to on and on and on. I keep changing all of my documents and photos as the technology changes, but it's annoying that I have to keep changing it to different things.
Well, you're absolutely right, because as the technology changes, they become obsolete. So right now, what I'm recommending is usually it's an external hard drive to house everything. And again, think of it just as one, you want your photos, for example, all in one place, and whatever that hub is to you, it should be something on the most current technology. So for many people, it's an external hard drive. I will say that a solid state drive is your better bet, because that's a safer, more consistent drive. And then also having a copy of that offsite. And that would be having something like a cloud backup. One thing that I recommend with cloud backup would be something like Backblaze. That's a company that will automatically back up that hard drive for you so that you always have a copy. So to your point, you have that piece of technology that's current, and then you have a backup. But then you have to take it one step further and on a regular basis, just look at your system and ask yourself, okay, is this still the best option? Or is there a new piece of technology? And if it's all in one place, simply moving it to another drive is that's not difficult once it's organized in one place. But it's when it's spread out on 10 different pieces of technology or 10 different formats, that's when it's difficult. So the hard work is up front, but then once you have it all up to date, you're just moving it over to the next platform. Does that answer your question? Now I can show you, I don't know if anybody wants to see some things that you can be doing with your pictures. One of the things that for some people, I feel like it's hard for them to get this kind of project started. So they actually have to come up with ways of motivating themselves. So for example, usually when I'm helping people go through their collection, I always tell them that, you know, the answers to what you're going to do is hidden in your collection. And it may be based on the travels that you took. And maybe you're going to find that there's themes that you want to capture, or you want to share all the places that you've gone. So maybe it's eventually you want to do some photo books. Or maybe it's the history of your career. I've had a lot of clients where either their career needs to be highlighted or their spouse's career, and being able to capture where things started and what that process looks like. And for many people, by the way, if you have a company or a family-owned company, your photos are really an asset, because that is the way you communicate the history, not only of your family, but then of your business. So that is a big, big thing to do. And considering, you know, where those stories are going to go to. I will tell you, if you have a business, your social media person will love old photos of the company and the team and where things have gone and how it's progressed. Another example is I was working with a lady in Winter Park, and she kept talking about her mother-in-law and how her mother-in-law was such a great cook and was always entertaining. And over the years, there were all these great pictures of the two of them and the family. So I'd asked the question, I said, well, where's her recipe book? She had passed away the year before. And turns out the client ends up calling her sister-in-law and gets a hold of the recipe book. And we ended up scanning all of those recipes. And later, the same client actually, and she let me make a copy of this book, but they ended up doing a memory book of, you know, Grandma Helen's recipes. And not only was it the recipes, but it was a combination of things like pictures of their memories, and notes of the family telling stories about Grandma Helen's recipes and all that she did at parties and how they all got together. And it was such a beautiful way of not only remembering that individual, but also passing on the traditions of their family. And this is actually, let me see here. I know that she always made cookies with the grandkids. So I know that was one of the things that they highlighted. And it's something that was actually given at a family reunion. My client ended up making 18 or 20 copies of this. And not only did everybody get this book, but they also got a USB drive in the shape of a little wooden spoon. And they had all of Grandma Helen's recipes in her handwriting and exactly as she would use those recipes. And Diane, I know you had mentioned something about the sugar cookie recipe, and the idea of how sometimes, you know, somebody in the family may have a special recipe that you want to share, but when you go looking through boxes or wherever it is you're looking, you may find that it's not as easy as you think. And I know, Diana, you said it was something like 18 different recipes and nobody knew which one they should be using. So again, being able to put this stuff together is incredible for your family. And this really came out. Go ahead. Oh, Jerry?
So if I take pictures with my iPhone on things that I want to save, and they go in the cloud on my phone, where do I go from there? How do I preserve them on a flash drive? I don't really know what an external hard drive is, or how do I share them with others or preserve them?
Well, that's a very good question. And
I think
I
that was-
will, and I would venture to say there's so many people in your situation. Apple is a great company. They have great devices. We all use the iPhone. I do. And, there's so many different things that they can do. But the way I do mention when it comes to Apple, they don't always play nice with others. And what I mean by that is if you have family members that you need to share pictures with, and they aren't on an Apple device, it can get a little tricky in sharing. So what we do, I actually have a whole team that works with the digital photos, which is what you're talking about. So there's lots of questions you have to ask about, not only are you using Apple and are you all on Apple, meaning not only your phone, but your computer, and are the people that may be needing access to your pictures on Apple? If the answer is yes, then that's a great solution. The next step would be really, depending on how large your collection is, you probably do need to get somebody that can make sure all the pictures are in there, not just what you're taking today, but if you have any pictures on your computer somewhere, just get them in there. They can be deduplicated, which is there's tools within the Apple infrastructure that can get rid of all the duplicates, and most collections will have a good bit if you've been using that same iCloud account for years and years. From there, then you can actually use tools within the Apple system like facial recognition and keywording. And again, that can be something that a specialist can do for you. You just have to tell them who the people are, and then they can name them for you and everything. But that is a process, and it just depends on how large your library is and how complex. And then there are ways to pull those pictures out if you choose that that's not the right place. But I will tell you that if you think you're going to pull your pictures out of Apple, don't go organizing them within Apple Photos. Because again, Apple is great if you're going to stay in Apple. But when you try to pull them out, all of the work of organizing does not come back out. So there's just a number of questions that have to be answered up front, and then you can kind of go from there.
Why wouldn't I be able to select the pictures and then transfer them to a disk or a flash drive or something like that?
There are ways to do that. There's ways to do that if it's a small a small amount. Let's say you're saying a dozen or 2 dozen photos, or you can you can extract all of those pictures out of there. What I'm saying though is you'll just get the pictures. For some people that have actually spent time creating special albums or maybe naming all the people in their lives, they get a little frustrated that work didn't come out as well. But you can certainly get your pictures out of Apple and put them onto a hard drive as a backup. That's absolutely something you can do.
Diana, you mentioned it's easy to switch things if they are Apple, if your family is also Apple. What do you do if they're not?
Well, again, there's a number of different solutions. So for example, there's the Apple, there's Amazon Photos, there's Google Photos, and then there's other tools like Lightroom and things like that that are a little bit more complex. But for example, we have some clients, actually I just had a client that we're finishing up with next week. She has an iPhone, she has iCloud, but she also has two sons that are far away, and they constantly are wanting to access her photos. So they not only do they want to send her photos, they want to actually have access so they can pull the old photos. So we're actually moving her to Amazon Photos. And with Amazon, by the way, if you have Prime, you actually have some free storage available on your Amazon account. And then Amazon has something called the Photo Vault, which allows for up to 5 users that can have access. And you can actually get very specific as to how much access they have, which folders and things. So in her case, all the historical photos from her life and her son's lives will be available to them because they have user credentials on the Amazon. Now it's still going to sync with her iPhone. So the photos will still, she can still use her phone just like she would and take pictures, but they're going to sync and move over to Amazon in that situation. Any other questions? I see. Okay, I saw a hand. Yes.
Hi. I'm going through parents and homes, and I'm finding old home movies that are probably 80 years old.
Yep.
What do we do? I have a projector, but I don't have a bulb. I'm better off I've moved them away from the ocean to a more stable climate thing. But where's the best way? What's the best suggestion?
So first off, when you say movies, are you talking about the real, like the 8mm like this? Or are you talking about, or a little bit of everything?
It's 8mm.
Okay.
I do. Isn't that the oldest, or was it 16 first?
I think it was 16. I actually have a
Okay.
reference to, yep.
These are
But-
16 and 8.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
earliest one.
So first off, one of the things you can do is open up that canister and kind of notice if there's any kind of vinegary smell.
Okay.
If there is, I would absolutely try to get those converted as soon as possible, because
Okay.
that is a sign that they are turning and it moves very
Yeah.
quickly. So here's the challenge. First off, if you're going through, different homes, or if it's parents' homes, I always tell people, with all this old media, put it into a box and start collecting, putting them all together.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. If in that case, you don't really need the old projector.
Okay.
The challenge is usually that they're not always labeled, so you don't know what's on there. Sometimes,
A lot of these are.
oh, that's great.
They
So
had
you-
people that did that.
Okay, that's perfect. So usually what we do is we're simply putting them into some kind of chronological order. And then it's a matter of just getting that converted. Now you do have to be really careful who you send those to, because first off, you want to make sure that they're going to, respect the
Right.
film. With some of the older films, some of it has audio and some of it does not. So you want to make sure that that's captured, because sometimes if they do settings based on the first few rolls,
Right.
they're not always capturing. So you need to make sure you're talking to somebody and making sure they really understand, what they do.
Yeah.
And then usually it's a matter, you have to convert them all to what I call the raw footage. So,
Okay.
you're going to get some footage that is meaningless, and then others that's priceless. So you're just going to convert that all to a digital file.
Okay.
You don't, at this point, you don't want a DVD, because those are already becoming obsolete.
Mhm.
Our conversion group will convert to both a digital format and give you the DVD, simply because the machines will still kick that out. But you want that digital format, because then the next step is having that footage edited down to the little clips that are meaningful. So if you can do nothing else, I would just get it into a safe, dry environment.
I have.
Yep. The next step would get it converted. So a lot of my clients will convert that all to a digital format, and then they'll just wait on editing for when they maybe have a project or there's a reason that they want to go through all of that. So,
We have one in the next generation that's a cinematographer. So
oh,
he
perfect.
said he'll do the editing.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
everybody gets a copy. We have had, his father at one point had it put on video, and we all got some of it, but I found more because my mother-in-law never threw anything away. And these were her
Yes.
parents' movies with their
Yes.
friends. And then newsreel of the parade with Lindbergh in New York, things like this. We've got some were produced they gave them, and some were their home movies. So I've just got to figure out where to get it done.
Well, that's something I can certainly help you with. I actually have a dedicated team that does that, because
Okay.
again, there's so many different formats and there's so many little intricacies about each type of film.
Right.
So you do have to be careful about that.
Okay.
And I always tell people also, I personally am not converting this because you need specialists that.
Oh, no, it has to
It
be.
has to be. And like I said, then it's just a matter of prioritizing. Sometimes people, if you have a lot that's, like I said, it's marked, then you at least can decide what needs to be converted and what doesn't.
Used to be photograph shop over in Orlando. I can't think of where right now. And it's no longer there. They,
Mhm.
used to have where you could go and take things and then convert it and they do the work. It was all photographers.
Right.
And but now with computers, everybody just send it off. No, this is
Well-
not stuff I mail off.
Now I will, and just full disclosure, I am shipping to a group. So it's not done here in
But
Orlando.
it's someone you know and have vetted,
Absolutely. Yes.
not
And
somebody you picked up off the internet.
no, not at all. And that is a huge thing.
Mhm.
I usually don't mention names, but I've had 2 clients recently, and actually I have a box, Legacy Box is a company you'll hear a lot about. They used to do great work and I never heard anything wrong. They were a competitor, but that's fine. But recently we've had clients that have not been happy with it. And the one that she actually handed me the box that she got back with the USB drive. And I took a look at what they did. And what's happening with companies like that is I think they're growing so fast. So maybe the people that started were great, but then they have to grow a team and you can't really be in, you don't know who you're going to get. And in their case, they had, some of it was VHS and some of the 90s, the small little tapes. Those actually hold about 2 hours worth of footage. But in some cases, there was 5 or 10 minutes. But what she got back was files that were all 2 hours long. They didn't even bother to take out the blue screen. They didn't bother to take out any of that.
They just play.
Exactly. And that's just not something that's going to be workable when you're reviewing that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
if that helps.
I'm trying to figure out what to do with some of this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not always just your own photos, but it's your parents' photos, or if somebody passed away, many people are inheriting these collections.
This goes back to great grandparents.
Yep.
So I feel like I've got to preserve them for the next generations, which are asking questions now.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. And anybody else? Go ahead.
Had a comment in the chat
Mhm.
saying that someone wanted to preserve things and she didn't have the equipment. She was able to do the scanning in a public library. Do you know if that's available in our area?
So I can't speak for the public library. I will say that the first thing I think of a public library, if you have a small amount, there are ways that you can do that, in a library, maybe if you're going to do 20 or 30 pictures. If you're going to do any more than that, you really need different equipment. You need some high-speed equipment. I mean, I have 4 different scanners in my office because I have a high-speed scanner, I have a flatbed scanner, I have a book scanner for anything that's bound or for scrapbook pages. So, and then I also have a document scanner. So it depends. It depends on what you have to scan. I do know, and actually right in Altamont Springs, there's a company called Easy Photo Scan. They used to be the largest reseller of Kodak scanners, but now those scanners have been discontinued. But I believe you can still rent scanners from them. So if somebody's a real do-it-yourselfer and they want to get that equipment, there's ways to rent it for a week. I do, and I've actually consulted with folks that just wanted to know how to do it enough for them to go do it themselves. So that's certainly an option too. If you have a lot of photos, but you're more of a do-it-yourselfer, there's ways to do that. And then also they're starting to get some scanners, I think by Epson, that are more in the $400 to $600 range, that are more affordable if you're going to be doing a large collection yourself. Now, has anyone tried to organize their photos on their own?
I have.
Yep.
I downloaded an app to my phone, which did a beautiful job scanning the photos.
Which one did you use?
I think it was a Google one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then there are ways to do that. The thing you have to be careful of with scanning with an app is that they will look great on your phone. But if your goal is to take some of those pictures and blow them up, or let's say you want to do a photo wall and you're going to take some of these old pictures and blow them up, the resolution may not be as high as you need. So that's the only thing you have to be careful of. But if what you're wanting to do is maybe email this picture to somebody or just share that memory, it's a fantastic way to go. It's really simple and quick and easy.
I used a Mixbook and made a photo album out of it. And when you're working in Mixbook, they tell you if you're trying to make it bigger than the pixels will allow.
Yes.
So they give you a heads up so you don't get blurry pictures in your final product.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a good way to go.
That was nice because I was able to annotate them with the family stories at the same time. So people didn't just get a box of photos and have no clue what anything meant.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And that's another piece of advice I would say is that it's not just about capturing the pictures, because if you don't share the story that goes along with that picture, then the legacy is lost. I can't tell you how many folks I work with when we do what's called an estate closing, and mom and dad are both passed, and now there's all these photos. And a lot of times we will have a box of unknown, and they're black and white photos. They recognize one or two people, so they know it's absolutely family, but they have no idea who's in the pictures, and they don't know the stories. And it's really sad because the clients will save those because they know it's part of their history and genealogy, but they're going to have to go hunting through the family for people to actually tell them the story. Myrna?
I don't have a question, but I recommend that people also take photos of the things that they think are very important mementos and give the story of that as well, and keep that as a memory book of some sort, or put it in your documents. I also wrote a book a few years ago. It has a list of every document that you need when you're going through somebody's things who have died and you need that information. And there's a copy of that in the University Club Library. It's called Lists for Living.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people don't even realize the things they need to keep. Not only the documents they need to keep, but also those mementos. And to your point, not only is it a great thing to capture the story, but then also that same document or collection of items in your household becomes an asset for the insurance company if something were to happen to your home. So you can actually kind of kill two birds with one stone when it comes to family treasures, and that is documenting those items that you have. In your grab and go kit, it might be, the value and the purchase information of those items. But then from a personal standpoint, you can annotate the story behind them, where they came from and how it applies to your family.
Yes, I did that, and I went through each room, closet, and drawer of my house. Couldn't believe how much junk I had, but I documented everything, and there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And that's a fantastic, just a fantastic gift for your kids or whoever will be going through your items many, many years from now, because they're not going to have to do that hard work that you've already done. So that's a wonderful gift for the next generation.
Back from the chat, Laura Klein is the one who was talking about working at her library. And she said they had a flatbed scanner and all the necessary equipment and tutorials. She did several hundred photos because she could scan many at a time. Mm-hmm. But she also said that was in Madison, Wisconsin. And I don't honestly know if that's available here. I mean, it might be.
I've worked with a number of the libraries. So I've worked with Winter Park, I've worked with the Maitland Library, Apopka. I've been a part of some Heritage Harvest with UCF. And usually, many times I've spoken and then Easy Photo Scan has brought in scanners, but it was more of a day event. So people could scan up to 100 photos or 200 photos as part of visiting that event. I don't know if any of the local libraries actually have an ongoing setup. Now I do believe, like I said, Easy Photo Scan, I know they were renting the equipment, and then they were talking about creating a scanning studio that you could pay to go to by the hour. And that way you could go in and feasibly scan hundreds or thousands of pictures at a time.
I'll pitch in. Thank you for tolerating my stretching and my icing. It's nice to be back, but it's nice to have you here. I do these, as much as I'm not crazy about Zoom, they really can be wonderful. I have to say, I'm really embarrassed as a trustee of the Winter Park Library that I can't tell you all sorts of things, but I've only come back on the board recently. And I feel certain that the Winter Park history area of the library, which when you come in the Winter Park Library right now, you go around to where the reference librarians are and turn left, and there's a whole space that has archives of Winter Park history, wonderful files on history, and a great volunteer corps that is doing scanning of treasures from those archives so that people can access them when they're at home. But what I know more is I got to tour the new library construction yesterday, and I know there's a room that I think is called the memory room. And I know that will have, what libraries are today is so much different than what libraries were 20 years ago, and what they offer and the possibilities of people really being in there and doing things. So I know that there is a particular room on the first floor on the side nearest the event center. You turn left and it's toward the back, toward the south side, that will be set up for people to do this sort of work. And I don't know enough about the stipulations and all of that. But I think right now with the Winter Park Library, they have a wonderful archivist named Rachel, and who seems to know everything. She's young and spirited and eager to help. And it would be, you could call and ask for Rachel, or you could go over there and see what's going on, because the library is now, I think, open 9 to 5. I think they've gone back to their original hours. So.
And did Rachel come from Rollins College?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
She didn't come from Rollins.
Okay, because I've worked with an archivist at Rollins who's also Rachel, so I was just curious.
Oh, really? Well, I don't know that, Rachel. They've got fabulous team at Rollins.
Yes, they do.
I've been spending more time there because I live in the Alabama, and our 100th anniversary is next year. The hotel was opened 100 years ago this year, and so trying to find some old records on that. I wish more people had saved things and contributed them to the library, but it's a great place for Winter Park history.
And did you check UCF? They have something called the Mosaic Project. And I can look up the contact there, but they actually not only will, so by the way, if you have items that are historic, they will add them to this Mosaic Project, and then they help to connect the dots. So for example, people that would have footage or photos from the opening day of Disney, you submit it, and then their database will connect the dots between them. So not only would you have your items, but you could also see other items from that point in time. And then from time to time, they will do specific projects. So at one point, I know they were asking if I had clients that had art, photos of Art Deco buildings throughout the state of Florida, and they're trying to connect, all of those. So that might be another place to check.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Turn off my sound.
Gay, did you have a question?
Yeah, my mother liked these photo albums that they're just plastic, and you put pictures between two pieces of plastic, and now it's like they're glued in there.
Yes.
In my house. So just a page that I just glued photos.
So that is actually what we deal with day in and day out. Believe it or not, so those albums from the 70s and 80s that had what they called the magnetic pages, but they really are, they weren't, there's nothing magnetic about them. They're really adhesive. So sometimes those will come off really easily. And by the way, when you open them up today, they usually will be yellow and brown all around the edges. So we actually have a toolkit of all sorts of little things you can do. A few things, like sometimes it's a matter of getting, we use little art spatulas. They're metal spatulas you can get at Sam Flax. And it's just enough to where you can pry those photos up. That's one option. You can use dental floss and take the dental floss and shimmy that behind the picture. And that sometimes can loosen them. Other times we'll take a hair dryer. So you put, if you can get that sheet off, and then you actually gently warm the page and kind of shimmy it back and forth, and it will kind of crack a little bit. And sometimes that's enough. Now, sometimes you're going to find these albums, and I will say usually they have those little metal spirals on the side. For whatever reason, those are like glue. Those, sometimes we actually have to scan the entire page, and then we're cropping out the individual pictures. And if the client wants to keep the original, then a lot of times we're actually cutting those pages and allowing them to keep them, in an archival sleeve. But really, it just depends. And I will tell you, we just did a job with 27 albums, and we got everything from simple and easy to pull out to completely glued down. And it just depends on the material it was made out of, how it was stored, and then also if how the person put these items into those books. So
Have you tried doing the microwave on any of them?
I have not done the microwave, and I would be really cautious because I will tell you sometimes those books will have even the smallest little piece of metal. And yep, so I would really be very cautious of using a microwave, but the hair dryer works great. And again, you're just kind of gently warming that page and then just testing and warming it a little bit and testing. And sometimes we literally have to take that picture and pull it up and then use that hair dryer, that warm air under there, and slowly pull that up.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Diana, you mentioned to me too, I had some pictures that were damaged by floodwaters. And you mentioned the freezer for little stacks of.
Yes. So, and this advice came from some of my colleagues that have worked in, was it Joplin, and some of the locations that had incredible flood damage. And many of them in those areas actually volunteered to help families try to do whatever they could to to recover some of these. So what Diana's mentioning is you can actually take a stack of photos that were water damaged and that have mold or the beginning stages of mold or mildew, and actually put them into a Ziploc bag, zip it up, and put it in the freezer. That actually will help to kill that mold and keep it from continuing on. And so that way, at least you can stop what's going on versus it having more and more damage. Has anyone else had issues with moldy pictures or pictures that are stuck together because of humidity?
I think some of my relatives have, because their basement was flooded.
Yeah. Another piece of advice with that is do not, when you're taking them out of the albums or you're dealing with them, do not store them on top of each other if you can. Actually, one of the things I've got here to show you on the project that we're working on, we went from 27 albums, and then we took out the pictures and actually used a little, sorting box like this. You can get these at a Hobby Lobby for a few dollars. And then just with index cards, we're recording the year and then putting that section, all those photos in there. So this type of box will hold just about 1,000 photos. And we took 27 albums and culled it down to 3 of these boxes. So by standing them upright, and I gotta be careful not to drop this, standing them upright like this, they're much less likely to stick together. So if there is any moisture, it just allows there to be a little bit of air between those pictures, instead of having the pressure of them sitting on top of each other and actually sticking together. Oh, Diana, you're muted.
Is there any way to stabilize DVDs of events such as weddings as time passes? That was a question from the chat.
Okay, so stabilize as in the image, or I don't know who asked the question, but when it comes to the VHS tapes, you definitely want to get those converted, and you want to get them converted to, again, a digital format. Usually that's an MP4 file or a file that's specific to either Apple or PC, but the MP4 file will work on either device. So you really have to bring them up to that current format. Now
Well,
keep it.
DVDs, do we need to move those to other things now?
Yes, you do. Yes, because, unfortunately, and this goes back to dealing with a company that at least knows the right questions to ask. So I've had clients that in the last year or two, they went to Costco or a company like that and, had them converted. And somebody said, oh, do you want that converted to a DVD? They say yes, and that's what they did. But they never bothered to ask what they were going to do with these pictures. And this client wanted to have her grandson edit these files, and he's going to edit them on a computer. And unfortunately, if you convert to a DVD, you can only watch it on a DVD player. So then that DVD has to be converted to the digital format. So yeah, that's just bringing it up to the most, recent format is what you have to do. And just a note there too, a lot of times people get a little bit frustrated because they look at the images and the video and they're like, gosh, that's so grainy. Or keep in mind that you can only get as good of an image as what was captured. And back in the 80s, that was the best we had. And it looked pretty good then, but we're just so used to the HD that seeing that stuff that was recorded in the 80s may not look as good as what you're used to seeing today.
When you and I got to this place in our conversation on the phone, I was starting to think, wow, this is going to be so expensive. I know I'll just do it myself, or I'll leave it in boxes in storage and I'll never do it. You mentioned you have several ways to manage that problem. You want to throw that out there?
Oh, certainly. And I get this question all the time because it can get costly. I mean, people, are trying to organize 60 or 70 years of a collection, and it does take time and effort. But first off, at least for me, the way I start with everybody is I do a getting started session. It's a 3-hour session. I come, to your home and we look at everything, we assess everything. And in some cases that may take, maybe we're just chatting for 30 minutes on what your goals are and who's involved and all of that. We look at everything, and then I may have time to dive in and actually start pulling things out of albums and showing you how to do this. So at the end of that 3 hours, usually one of two things happen. Either you get a really good idea of what you need to do, you see the tools that you need, and they turn to me and say, okay, great, I'm going to do some homework for a few weeks or a month, and I'll call you when it's time to scan. And that's fantastic. So it's kind of a hybrid. They get a little guidance, they do it some themselves, and then they let us know the parts they want to outsource. The other option, or the other thing that happens, is people are so overwhelmed, they just, look at me and they're like, okay, could you just do this all? And in that case, certainly we can do that as well. And then it's just a matter of spreading things out and deciding, do you want to get it all done right now? And, time is of the essence and not so much budget. Or does it make sense to spread it out and say, maybe create a monthly budget, or to decide how you're going to approach it? There's a lot of different ways to do it in that area. The other thing when it comes to how much this can cost, again, I work with a team specifically on the digital. So I know there was a gentleman talking about his Apple photos, for example. With that area, there are actual packages that you can look at, and a standard package, for example, would be organizing up to 50,000 photos from up to 10 devices. And a device would be a phone, a computer, a hard drive, and let's say Dropbox or Shutterfly. So it's really common that people will have maybe 5 devices or 7 devices. So a package like that could accommodate, a family collection. And a lot of times those, I think, will start at about $2,200, $2,300. And what you would end up spending, let's say hourly, to get a tech person do what ends up coming out of this package is, incredible. So it really is very economical to go with the experts and then just get the entire thing done versus not. And then obviously there's collections that are in the hundreds or hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And then there's simple ways to budget that out and decide, okay, we've got to add on a little bit more help, but you're still, doing that. And keep in mind, for some people, you're maybe organizing a collection that many people in your family want to be a part of. So if that's the case, if you're emptying out mom and dad's, home, maybe it's something that needs to be cost that needs to be spread out amongst, a number of children, or part of an estate closing. So there's definitely ways to get that taken care of and also, paid for.
And you also offer workshops for people that want to try to do it themselves, to tell them what to do.
Yes. So a few different workshops that I've done. And then I also work with another local organizer. Her name is Sue Marie Bowling. And we have done workshops. One is called Leave Your Kids the Memories, Not the Mess. Sue Marie will talk about how to deaccumulate your house and, cull the things in your house down. And then I address the memories, photos and videos and all of that. I also do a workshop on how to set up your grab and go kit. We also do one that also with Sue Marie called Power Over Paper. And that is trying to tackle all that paper, both the physical paper and how it comes into your life, and then the digital paper, either because you've digitized it or just the digital things like email and your digital calendar and things like that.
Well, I told you when we were talking, you had a sentence that I loved, so I'm going to quote you.
Mm-hmm.
She said, what you want to end up with is a nice, well-organized box or boxes, but also have digital copies of everything to pass on to kids and grandkids. And I can honestly
Absolutely.
tell you from my own life, I have wonderful intentions, but I started organizing our photos and I worked really hard for about a month, and that's where I still am.
Yep.
Could you give us your contact information in the chat?
Oh, absolutely.
I can put
Absolutely.
it in an email when we send out a link for this, because I did record. I can put it in an email that goes to all club
Be
members.
great.
if you want me
Mhm.
to do that. And it'll be on Facebook too.
Absolutely. And feel free, if you have questions, to email me. And again, from time to time, once we get back to more of a face-to-face environment, there'll be opportunities for workshops. Or if any of you have a group of folks that want to do a workshop or even something via Zoom, let me know.
Ann, you want to say goodbye? Does anybody else have any questions while Ann is unmuting?
Guess that means I don't do Zoom too much or don't talk too much, which is a good sign. I wish for everybody here who has identified a need, I wish you power to start. Or if you've already started, I wish you energy to continue. And I need it too. So it's a really universal wish. It's really exciting when you make some progress. And I appreciate Diana's coming and help us know some of the possibilities and giving us a path that we can follow among many paths, one that seems to be really sensible and worth budgeting for. So thanks for giving your time to us tonight. And it's great to see you again in person on this tour yesterday, I saw all these people and I didn't know half of them. And then when I said, I want to know your name, two of them pulled their mask off and said, well, you do know me. So it's really exciting to see you all with your full faces. And Diana, great to see you again. Thanks.
You too. And thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate the time and the ability to do this comfortably from home.